Hello ladies and gentlemen. While the discussion of power creep has been dominating recently in terms of boss HP growth and mechanics, there is an underlying principle that not all of power creep is to make old characters invalid. In fact, throughout the history of Star Rail, there have been plenty of characters that were the exact opposite. Characters that started off fairly weak or niche and ended up being updated through many factors of the evolving metagame. I've said a very similar thing previously in my Kafka theorem, where low tier units or bad mechanics can be fixed by future characters. I will be giving 3 more examples of different scenarios that can achieve the same effect. These are quote-unquote the late bloomers of Star Rail, units who would reach greater heights later on in their life cycle. Possibly the strongest contender of a late bloomer is Herta. In version 1.0, Herta was unanimously one of the worst characters in the game. Even though in early Star Rail, MOC had multiple waves instead of 2, the trash waves where Herta would be good for was in fact so trivial that the level of investment you have to put for Herta wasn't worth it. The parts where you did get serious were if there were 2 large enemies that were very motivated to stun and hit you. And when the going gets tough, Herta just gets worse. Outside of farming, AoE content with constant breaks allowed was scarce, and not to mention enemy HP. Herta simply just wasn't built for MOC's format and was used 90% of the time as an auto-farming character. How could she ever come back? First version of the game and she's already regulated as a tractor. It's not like they can make an endgame that was almost the same as auto-battle farming. Well, look where we are now. Pure Fiction was released in 1.6 and was a mode that really brought a new coat of paint to many weaker units. It's a mode that would almost always have 5 targets and slice their total HP into multiple constantly respawning enemies. During that time, Destruction was the leading damage dealer path, some of which can hit 5 enemies but were mostly blast. Those units like Clara and Blade, to name a few, would prosper. Meanwhile, units like Jingliu and Imbiber Lune, who were extremely strong characters, suffered because they were so potent at damage that they would overkill and waste their damage. Nihility would see some detraction due to the debuff application, and Harmony became stronger. Herta was quite simply perfect for this environment. Total enemy HP was split into more than 30 enemies with almost always 5 enemies present. Since the HP is split so much, it's easy to activate Herta's spin. Herta's maximum amount of spins are the same amount of enemies there are, and multiplying that due to quadratic scaling with each enemy on the field leads her to being one of the best characters for the mode and solidifying a strong niche for herself. Her amount of spins can enable other characters that like frequent attacks or the results of those frequent attacks. For 6 patches, Herta would be drifting in the limbo of irrelevance, never having that much of endgame relevant scenarios, being the butt of the joke and was not recommended to even level. Then she came back, and to this day is one of the top meta characters you should invest in, even if you have limited 5-star characters. You can't even judge a non-meta run of PF just on the cost alone, because Herta is a 4-star and beats out most 5-star units. It just goes to show, it's not only new characters that could bring a horrible unit up to date, but a whole game mode just designed on their environment. One of the biggest unsung heroes of the meta being accessible to free-to-play is not a limited 5-star character. It wasn't even a standard character, or a 5-star. It's the one and only Pela. While nothing really sticks out as anything broken in Pela's kit number-wise, it's how Pela works and how the bosses evolved around her. During 1.0, people did not have developed accounts that could build her energy and EHR well. Even though the importance of Depth Shred was quite valued in calcs, highly invested accounts just couldn't get her to an acceptable level because of her insane stat goals due to the higher enemy effect res. In 1.1, the effect res nerf changed enemies to make them weaker to Nihility units and made Pela better, but then Silverwolf released. Silverwolf was regarded as strictly the better character because implanting weakness was unique only to her, and breaking actually mattered when enemies were much more dangerous and sustain options were rarer and weaker. Silverwolf's drawback against Pela was needing more SP against non-single target content due to uptime issues, and because of that, people already considered Pela as power creep. But as we know, Pela would become the winner of this race. If you take a look at the bosses, it starts to make sense why Pela has stuck for so long and still used in most endgame content. 1.0 to 1.1, it was nasty buffs like the Mara struck. 1.2, the monkey had a dangerous stacking buff that could be dispelled. Pela can use her basic end skill easily to control the aggro mechanic, whereas other supports like Asta had a strict rotation. 1.3, the swarm wanted quick and high AoE damage to get rid of the buffs. Pela was excellent at enabling that. 1.4, it was the IPC boss that wanted fast AoE breaks and they were weak to ice. 1.5, Argenti, I don't think I need to say more than that. 1.6, it was Pure Fiction, which would have logically been awful for Pela, but Pela's ultimate cost is so low, and due to her E1 being utterly broken for PF, she becomes meta for spamming ults to shred toughness. 2.0 Sam Boss. Pela is one of the few good supports that could damage with her skill and can basic for safety with no issues of ultimate uptime. 2.1 Aventurine Boss. Pela was a rare general support that was safe to run due to AoE ultimates. 2.2 Shared HP, which made AoE defense shred better, and so on. Despite Pela's lower numbers, she has managed to survive this far because of how well she can fit against most, if not all, bosses. While stronger enablers like Sparkle had issues with Aventurine, Silverwolf had trouble with AoE, and even supports like Bronya appreciated Pela's SP generation, and defense shred units stacked well with more defense shred. Unlike the other late bloomers, Pela always had the impression of a unit that was okay, but was never the best and was about to be power crept each patch. But if you're free to play or a low spender, then you're probably realizing just now how many times you've used Pela simply because she's so available, easy to use, and can tackle something the bosses do. And she's been here since day one. Think of the other 1.0 unit, which one of them are still used today, and if they can handle any boss or endgame mode. Pela is like Yun Li, never the best but always does something, except she's a support, which makes her even more valuable. She is a late bloomer because throughout time with more and more enemies, more and more of her potential as a generic character is realized, and has led her to an incredible meta shelf life. Even as an avid supporter, I do have to say that someday maybe Pela will finally meet her match and someday she can finally retire. But nonetheless, Pela has shown throughout almost 2 years that it isn't just new characters that could realize a unit's potential to shine later. It's the enemy design that could give the unit the value that they need. Himeko is our last subject. While you may be thinking, wait, doesn't Himeko have the exact situation as Herta? You had your take before on this wave. Well, we can stop right here because yes, Himeko is a late bloomer just on the PF situation alone. But unlike the puppet, Himeko has outgrown PF and somehow found herself in every endgame mode in a second bloom. While you would think Himeko would be a victim of a, let's say, new fire character that had less need for fire weakness and much easier to run outside PF, that wasn't really what happened to Himeko. Due to the release of Firefly, they shield a lot of fire weak enemies, which by itself wouldn't necessarily make Himeko great, but add the fact that Firefly is blast, wanted quick breaks, and scaled with break damage, then you've created a unique interaction. This interaction was Himeko being so similar to Firefly that Firefly's favorite enemy designs would similarly fall over to Himeko. The greatest example of this is Past, Present, Future, a 3 elite boss with shared HP and fire weakness. Himeko slaughters this boss because it's as close as she gets to her dream scenario in MOC. Shared HP for erudition is fun, fire weakness for Himeko's break-hungry nature is great, 3 elites meaning a full follow-up was good, and she works so well with break you can transpose Firefly with Himeko in her team archetypes for super break. Same with apocalyptic shadow enemies like the Doomsday Beast and Banana Amusement for MOC. Much like what I said with the Ting Yun theorem, similar enough new units don't power creep each other but can create a scenario where it helps the power crept unit. Himeko, funnily enough, became meta twice, and it was indirectly due to a new DPS which used a new support that fought new enemies that Himeko coincidentally works great on all 3. Because of this, I don't know how to count this. What do you call a late bloomer that happened twice? Well, regardless, Himeko shows that it's not just a new character that directly benefits the unit, but in fact, similar units allowing older units to ride their coattails to the meta. Anyway, I hope you guys like this video. Comment down below what you think or any other characters you consider were ahead of their time or are late bloomers or anything like that. Thank you so much for watching. Happy holidays. I've grown almost 7,000 subscribers in 1 year. Seriously, I can't thank you enough for that. This growth is insane to me. But anyway, I'll see you later. Bye bye.